Just 3 minutes ago, the morning calm at Buckingham Palace was shattered. There was no fanfare, no scheduled briefing, and absolutely no warning. What the world received was an emergency statement that has sent shockwaves through every newsroom from London to New York. If you thought the silence of the last few months was unsettling, what just happened is catastrophic. The official Royal Communications Channel posted a bulletin that was brief, stark, and absolutely devastating. For months, we were fed a narrative of planned abdominal surgery. We were told to respect the privacy of a future queen. We were told that recovery was going well. But that narrative has just collapsed. The statement confirmed a critical deterioration in the Princess of Wales's condition. But it didn't stop there. Leaks emerging from deep within the palace walls, emanating from a confidential medical summary that was never meant to see the light of day, have finally put a name to the mystery. It wasn't just surgery. It wasn't just recovery fatigue. Sources close to the medical team have revealed that Princess Catherine has been battling a rare, complex autoimmune neurological disorder. This is a diagnosis that changes everything. It explains the motor control issues whispered about in private circles. It explains the sudden retreat from public life. It explains the fear in King Charles's eyes during recent appearances. This revelation proves that the surgery narrative was, at best, a half-truth, and at worst, a calculated lie designed to buy time. The palace wasn't protecting Catherine's privacy. They were protecting the institution from the terrifying reality that their greatest asset, the woman who humanizes the monarchy, was facing a battle her body might not win. But the most shocking part of this emergency release isn't just the diagnosis, it is the timing. Why now? Why, after months of ironclad secrecy, did the palace suddenly decide to drop the mask? Insiders report that this statement was not part of the plan. It was a panicked reaction to a situation spiraling out of control behind closed doors. And where was Prince William when this bomb dropped? The answer is the first tragic twist in this unfolding drama. According to senior aides, the Prince of Wales was not sitting in a strategy meeting. He wasn't by his father's side approving the text. He was reportedly in transit to a private, off-the-record charity engagement, completely unaware that the press office was about to hit send on the most sensitive update of his wife's life. Imagine that moment. The future king, isolated in a moving vehicle, his phone buzzing not with a briefing from his staff, but with the same breaking news alert that you and I received. The betrayal he felt in that instant is the spark that is about to ignite a fire within the House of Windsor. The palace didn't just break the news to the world, they broke trust with the heir to the throne. The atmosphere inside Kensington right now is described by one staffer as worse than the days following Diana. The gates are locked, the phones are ringing off the hook, and the question on everyone's lips is no longer, "Where is Kate?" It is, "Who authorized this leak, and can the monarchy survive the truth they tried to hide?" Stay with me, because to understand why this diagnosis was hidden, you have to understand the power struggle that has been raging between King Charles, Queen Camilla, and Prince William for weeks. The autoimmune diagnosis isn't just a medical term, it's the reason the palace is falling apart. The betrayal Prince William felt in the back of that limousine cannot be overstated. For a future king to learn about his wife's critical condition through a breaking news alert is not just a breakdown in communication, it is a declaration of internal war. Sources close to the prince say the moment he saw the headline, the color drained from his face, replaced instantly by a cold, searing fury. He reportedly ordered his security detail to turn the convoy around immediately. The charity engagement was forgotten. His destination was now Clarence House. What William realized in that split second was that the machinery of the monarchy had turned against him. Standard protocol dictates that a statement of this magnitude, one that concerns the health of a senior royal, must go through a multi-layered approval process involving both Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace. It is a system designed to prevent exactly this kind of chaos. But today, that system was deliberately dismantled. Leaked memos from the press office now paint a disturbing picture of what happened in the minutes leading up to the release. The order to publish did not come through the usual channels. It came as a last-minute override from a senior royal figure, bypassing William entirely. Who had the power to do that? Who had the motive to distract the press with Kate's trauma? The whispers in the corridors of power are pointing to one person, and William knows it. By the time William arrived at Clarence House, the atmosphere was already toxic. He didn't just walk in, he stormed in. Witnesses describe a confrontation that shattered the polite decorum usually maintained between father and son. William demanded to know who authorized the release. He accused the king's advisors, the gray suits, of sacrificing Kate's dignity to feed the media beast. He asked the question that no one dared to answer. Was this distraction released to cover up a different scandal brewing elsewhere in the family? But while the men argued over protocol and power, the terrifying reality of Catherine's condition began to sink in for the public. The phrase, autoimmune neurological disorder, is now circulating in medical communities and royal forums alike. This is not a broken bone. It is not a routine infection. This is the body turning against itself. According to the confidential medical summary that slipped through the cracks, this diagnosis explains the months of silence in a way that nothing else could. The symptoms of such a disorder are unpredictable and cruel: chronic fatigue, potential speech difficulties, and periods where motor control can be compromised. For a woman whose entire role is built on being visible, poised, and perfect, this condition is a career-ending nightmare. We now know that the palace knew about this months ago. When they told us she was recovering well, they were managing a crisis, not telling the truth. They were terrified. They knew that if the world realized the future queen was battling a chronic, potentially debilitating neurological condition, the illusion of stability would crumble. They needed Kate to be the unbreakable symbol of the modern monarchy. But Kate is human, and behind the palace gates, she wasn't standing tall. She was fighting just to get through the day. The tragedy is that Catherine wanted to control her own narrative. She wanted to share her struggle on her own terms, to use her pain to help others facing similar battles. But she was silenced. She was told to smile, to wave, to pretend, until today. The leak has stripped her of that choice, exposing her vulnerability to the world without her consent. And as William looked at his father, realizing the depth of the deception, he understood that the battle was no longer just about protecting his wife's privacy. It was about saving her from the very institution she married into. But what William didn't know in that heated moment was that Catherine had already taken matters into her own hands. While the men fought over power, she had written a letter that was about to change the course of history. While the powerful men of the monarchy were locking horns in strategy rooms, screaming over protocol and damage control, Catherine was doing something far more dangerous. She was writing. In the solitude of her recovery, isolated from the public and managed by the institution, she found the only weapon she had left: her pen. Just hours after the emergency statement aired, a document leaked to the press changed the entire complexion of this crisis. It wasn't a typed memo from a press secretary. It was a handwritten letter, penned by the Princess of Wales herself, dated several weeks before today's chaos. It was addressed to 3 people: Prince William, her children, and most significantly, Princess Anne. The contents of this letter are not just sad, they are a devastating indictment of the system she married into. In a hand that appeared shaky but resolute, Catherine wrote of a creeping fear that had nothing to do with her autoimmune diagnosis and everything to do with her legacy. "I am afraid," she wrote, "that the story they will tell when I am gone won't be mine, that they will erase who I really am, not by accident, but by design." These words hit the public like a thunderclap. For years, we have watched Kate smile through exhaustion, wave through pain, and adhere to the motto, "Never complain, never explain." But in this private confession, the mask slipped. She described the suffocating pressure of institutional image preservation, the practice of masking pain until it becomes invisible. She wrote, "My body may have failed in this moment, but do not let them pretend I was always smiling as it broke." This was not a woman asking for pity. This was a woman fighting against erasure. She knew the machinery around her was already shifting, preparing to recast her image into something neat, palatable, and forgettable if she could no longer fulfill her duties. She refused to let that happen, and she knew there was only one person in the royal family strong enough to help her: Princess Anne. The letter explicitly urged Anne to continue what Catherine had begun. "If they silence me," she pleaded, "if they erase my fight, I ask you to carry the truth forward." It was more than a request. It was the passing of a torch. Catherine knew that William, for all his love, was trapped by his position as heir. But Anne has always been the steel backbone of the family, loyal to the crown but intolerant of nonsense. When Princess Anne read those words, sources say she didn't just weep, she mobilized. For decades, Anne has been the dutiful soldier, the one who follows the rules. But this letter broke something in her. It forced her to choose between the institution she serves and the human dignity of a woman she has come to love like a daughter. And today, we saw her choice. The leak of this letter wasn't a mistake. Royal insiders suspect it was a calculated move, perhaps by Anne herself, or an ally within her circle, to force the king's hand. By letting the world hear Kate's voice, raw and unfiltered, they stripped the palace of the ability to spin the narrative. They made sure that no matter what the gray suits released in their sterile statements, the world would know the truth of Kate's suffering. But the letter contained one final, veiled strike. Without naming names, Catherine wrote about those who prefer the silence, who view my condition not as a tragedy, but as an inconvenience. The public didn't need a name to know who she was talking about. All eyes turned instantly to Queen Camilla, and that shift in focus would soon lead to the most dramatic fall from power the modern monarchy has ever seen. But even Prince William, in his fury, didn't expect what would happen next. While he was confronting his father behind the closed doors of Clarence House, another powerful royal was making a move that would stun the world. In an unprecedented breach of protocol, Princess Anne, the woman known as the monarchy's steel backbone, the unwavering stickler for rules, stepped into the spotlight alone. For decades, Anne has been the silent soldier of the crown. She shows up, she does the work, and she never complains. But the letter from Catherine changed everything. It reminded Anne of the isolation she had seen before, perhaps echoing the struggles of Diana, or perhaps just striking a chord of basic human decency that the institution had long forgotten. Whatever the trigger, Anne decided that loyalty to the crown could no longer mean betrayal of the family. In a quiet yet pointed public address, delivered just hours after the leak, Anne spoke not just as a royal, but as Catherine's friend. The palace press office was reportedly panicked, trying to intercept her statement. But Anne is not someone you silence easily. Standing before a sea of flashing cameras, she delivered a message that defied every page of the royal playbook. Calm, composed, but unmistakably firm, Anne spoke of Catherine not as a title to be managed, but as a woman, a mother, and a fighter. She didn't use the sterile language of medical bulletins. She used words like courage, suffering, and silence. She referenced the internal fears of vulnerability, hinting heavily that those in power had deliberately withheld the truth to protect the brand rather than the person. "This is no longer about royal image," she declared, looking directly into the cameras. "It is about human dignity." That single sentence echoed across the globe. It was a direct challenge to the gray suits, and, by extension, to King Charles and Queen Camilla. Anne was drawing a line in the sand. She was telling the world that the era of sacrificing women to save the monarchy's face was over. The impact was immediate and explosive. Social media erupted. Hashtags like #StandWithCatherine and #TruthOverTradition began trending worldwide. Thousands of people gathered outside royal residences, not with anger, but with candles and posters supporting Kate. For the first time in months, the public wasn't just speculating, they were choosing sides. And they were siding with the rebels, William, Anne, and Catherine, against the institution. Inside the palace, the reaction was catastrophic. Queen Camilla was reportedly livid. Sources say she viewed Anne's intervention as a personal attack, a deliberate attempt to undermine the king's authority and her own influence during a crisis. Rumors are swirling that Camilla attempted to block further press coverage of Anne's address, making frantic calls to friendly editors. But those efforts failed. The tide had turned. The public had seen the cracks in the facade, and no amount of PR spin could plaster over them now. The palace was no longer unified. It was fractured into two distinct camps, those fighting for the truth and those fighting to keep the secrets buried. And caught in the middle was King Charles. He was now facing a nightmare scenario. His son was furious, his sister had gone rogue, his daughter-in-law's tragic letter was public, and his wife was being painted as the villain of the piece. The silence that Charles had maintained for hours was no longer an option. He could not hide behind medical privacy laws or no-comment policies. The monarchy was burning, and he was the only one holding a fire extinguisher. But to use it, he would have to make a choice that would hurt the person he loves most. He would have to choose between his wife, Camilla, and the future of the crown. Faced with global outrage, internal revolt, and a son on the verge of open rebellion, King Charles finally realized he had run out of road. The strategy of silence, orchestrated by his advisors and heavily influenced by the Queen Consort's team, had failed spectacularly. The monarchy was staggering. Approval ratings were hitting historic lows. The king had to act, and what he decided to do would stun even his closest allies. In a rare live broadcast, King Charles addressed the nation. For weeks, the monarchy had been fragmented, hiding behind spokespeople. But on that evening, the image on the screen was no longer one of avoidance. It was confrontation. Charles sat alone, looking solemn and visibly shaken. He spoke not as a sovereign protected by protocol, but as a man burdened by consequence. He began by doing what no British monarch does easily. He admitted fault. "The communication surrounding my daughter-in-law's condition was mishandled," he said, his voice grave, "and for that, I take full responsibility." It was a moment of reckoning. But the apologies were just the preamble. The real earthquake came next. In a move that sent shockwaves through the palace staff, Charles addressed the internal machinery of the monarchy. He announced the immediate suspension of all narrative-related authority previously delegated to Queen Camilla. It was a polite, bureaucratic phrasing for a brutal political execution. Her control over the royal press strategy, the power she had reportedly used to deflect attention from herself by keeping the focus on Kate's recovery, was gone. The message was unmistakable. No more spin, no more suppression. The king had chosen the survival of the crown over the influence of his wife. Charles then ordered full transparency on Catherine's medical condition. Moving forward, a new royal medical liaison would be appointed, operating independently from palace influence. The days of hiding behind vague statements about planned procedures were over. "The public deserves the truth," he declared, looking tired but resolute. "And more importantly, so does Catherine." But the king had one final gesture to make a peace offering to the woman he had failed to protect. He announced that a major royal health foundation would be renamed in honor of Princess Catherine, not posthumously, not ceremonially in the distant future, but now. "Let her legacy be one of light, not shadow," he said. "Let her courage lead the next generation." And then, with a pause that seemed to stop time itself, the king's voice cracked. "She is," he said softly, "the heart of our modern monarchy." It wasn't scripted polish. It was grief. It was regret. Some viewed the statement as noble. Others saw it as reactive, a desperate attempt to salvage what had already been torn apart. But no one could deny its magnitude. A monarch had publicly admitted failure. A queen consort had been stripped of power. And a daughter-in-law, long silenced, had finally been given a voice through the very system that once muted her. Yet, as the cameras cut away and the broadcast ended, the question remained. Was it too late? Charles had stopped the bleeding, but the wound was deep. And in the shadows of the palace, a furious Queen Camilla was reportedly planning her next move, unwilling to go down without a fight. In the days following King Charles's emotional address, the atmosphere around the royal estates shifted from panic to a somber, protective silence. The king's admission had lanced the boil, but the healing process required something the monarchy had rarely granted its members: genuine peace. Quietly, under the cover of darkness and shielded by a full royal guard, Princess Catherine was transferred. She was moved from the suffocating scrutiny of Windsor to a secure, undisclosed medical facility. This location was chosen not just for its advanced care capabilities, but for its isolation. It was a fortress of solitude, a rare sanctuary where a woman who has lived her entire adult life under a microscope could finally focus on one thing: survival. This move signaled a profound shift. Kate was no longer a public asset to be rolled out for photo ops. She was a patient. She was a mother fighting for her life, and for the first time, the system was treating her as such. But the most powerful statement didn't come from a press release about her location. It came from her husband. Prince William, having fought the internal battle and won, made a public decision that sent a clear message to the institution he will one day lead. He announced that he would pause all public royal duties indefinitely. There would be no speeches, no ribbon cuttings, no diplomatic tours, and no symbolic handshakes while his wife was in this condition. His message was short, blunt, and incredibly potent. My place is with her, not in front of cameras. It was the kind of gesture that resonated far beyond the palace gates. In a world used to royals putting duty above all else, often at the expense of their families, William was breaking the mold. He was choosing love over obligation. He was telling the world that the crown is important, but Catherine is essential. Even the harshest critics of the monarchy, those who had spent weeks tearing apart the PR disasters, fell silent in the face of a husband simply trying to protect his wife. This wasn't an abdication of his future role, it was a redefinition of it. William was showing that a modern king must be a human being first. By stepping back, he wasn't showing weakness. He was showing a strength that his father had failed to show years ago with Diana. He was ensuring that history would not repeat itself. As William retreated behind the walls of the secure facility to be by Catherine's side, a strange phenomenon occurred across the UK. The public anger that had boiled over the secrecy began to transform into a deep, collective sorrow and respect. The crowds outside Buckingham Palace didn't disperse, they changed. The angry placards demanding, "Where is Kate?" were replaced by flowers, candles, and letters of support. But amidst this somber retreat, there was one voice the world had not yet heard. A voice small, innocent, but carrying the weight of the entire family's trauma. While the adults had fought their wars with leaks and statements, the royal children had been watching, and soon a message would emerge from the nursery that would melt even the coldest hearts. Then, something extraordinary happened. In the midst of the geopolitical maneuvering and the constitutional crisis, a rare public statement pierced through the noise. It didn't come from a press secretary, and it wasn't stamped with the royal crest of the king or the Prince of Wales. It came from Princess Charlotte. Carefully written in her own words, likely with the help of her father but retaining the unmistakable simplicity of a child, the message was released to the public. It read, "Mommy is strong. Even when she's quiet, I know she's fighting. I love her more every day." It was a child's voice, but it carried the weight of a nation's grief and pride. In a world of spun narratives and complex medical bulletins, this single message was raw, unfiltered, and devastatingly real. It melted even the most cynical hearts. It reminded everyone that behind the titles, the crowns, and the diagnosis, there is a little girl just wanting her mother to be okay. That statement did more to repair the image of the royal family in 5 minutes than the palace PR machine had done in 5 months. It humanized them. It stripped away the pomp and circumstance and revealed a family in crisis, clinging to each other for support. Meanwhile, the structural changes King Charles had promised began to take shape, and at the helm was the one person the public now trusted implicitly, Princess Anne. In a move that historians will likely look back on as a turning point for the modern monarchy, Anne was officially appointed as the first-ever chair of Royal Health Transparency. This was a newly created role, born out of disaster, but it was a symbolic correction. It signaled that the monarchy was finally acknowledging the damage done by decades of secrecy. Anne's mandate is clear, ensuring that the health and dignity of family members are never again sacrificed for the sake of optics. It wasn't just a gesture, it was a reckoning. The effect of these changes, William's devotion, Charlotte's love, and Anne's integrity was visible on the streets of the UK. Candlelight vigils began to appear in cities, towns, and villages. Crowds gathered in respectful silence, holding photos of Catherine, handwritten notes, and prayers. This wasn't staged. It wasn't organized by the Crown to boost ratings. It was real. It was a reflection of the bond Catherine had forged with the public over the years, not through grand speeches, but through her quiet strength, her humanity, and the grace she maintained even when the walls were closing in. The narrative had shifted completely. The anger at the lie had dissipated, replaced by a collective desire to protect the woman at the center of the storm. Catherine was no longer just a princess of Wales fulfilling a role. She was becoming something else entirely. She was transforming into a symbol. And as the sun set on a week that had shaken the foundations of the monarchy, a new reality began to dawn. The old ways of never complain, never explain, were dead. A new path was being forged, one built on truth, however painful it might be. But the story isn't over yet, because even in her absence, Catherine's influence is reshaping the future of the crown in ways King Charles never anticipated. And now, a profound transformation is underway. The public no longer sees Catherine as just a princess, a fashion icon, or a future queen consort waiting in the wings. In the eyes of millions, she has become something far greater. She has become a symbol of resilience. By refusing to let her story be erased, by documenting her struggle in that letter, and by forcing the monarchy to confront its own cruelty, Catherine has rewritten the rules of royal survival. She has reminded the world and the Windsor family that vulnerability is not weakness, that silence is not always consent, and that a true legacy is not forged by titles or tiaras, but by truth. The monarchy that wakes up tomorrow will not be the same one that existed yesterday. The illusion of the fairy tale is gone, shattered by the reality of a medical crisis and an internal coup. But in its place, something stronger might emerge. A monarchy that admits when it bleeds. A monarchy that prioritizes the people inside the palace over the stone walls that surround them. King Charles has made his move to correct the course, but the road ahead is fragile. Queen Camilla remains a powerful figure, wounded but not defeated. Prince William has drawn his line in the sand, proving his loyalty lies with his wife first, and the crown second. And Princess Anne stands guard over the truth, ensuring the gray suits can never again bury a diagnosis to save face. As we await the next official update from the newly transparent medical team, one thing is certain. This is no longer just about health. It is about history. It is about the survival of an ancient institution in a modern world that demands honesty. Princess Catherine may be out of sight, recovering in the quiet sanctuary she fought so hard to secure, but her presence has never been felt more strongly. She didn't just survive the silence, she broke it, and in doing so, she may have just saved the monarchy from itself. While the emotional storm over Princess Catherine's diagnosis begins to calm, a colder, more dangerous political reality is setting in behind the palace gates. King Charles's historic statement may have saved the monarchy's image, but it has created a constitutional nightmare that experts are calling the greatest threat to the crown since the abdication of 1936. Consider the reality of the board right now. King Charles is battling his own cancer, his energy reserves depleted. Princess Catherine, the future queen, is out of action indefinitely in a secure facility. And now, Prince William has officially stepped back from duties to be her caretaker. This leaves the House of Windsor effectively empty. The slimmed-down monarchy that Charles always promised has become an invisible monarchy, and nature abhors a vacuum. Panic is reportedly spreading through Parliament. Constitutional experts are dusting off the Regency Act of 1937. The question being whispered in the corridors of Westminster is terrifyingly simple. Who is actually in charge? If King Charles becomes too ill to govern, and Prince William refuses to leave his wife's side to take up the burden of regent, the line of authority falls into chaos. By law, the next Counsellors of State include figures the public has rejected, Prince Andrew and Prince Harry. The mere thought of executive royal power falling into their hands, even temporarily, has sent shivers down the spine of the establishment. But the real threat might be closer to home. Sources suggest that despite being stripped of her narrative control, Queen Camilla is not retreating. With the king weak and the prince absent, she remains the only senior royal figure still standing at the center of the court. Insiders claim she is quietly consolidating her position, positioning herself as the indispensable hand guiding the king through this crisis. While Princess Anne holds the moral high ground and the new transparency role, she is constitutionally limited. Camilla is the queen consort, and in the absence of a strong king or a present Prince of Wales, her influence, which William fought so hard to curb, could quietly return, stronger than before. William knows this. Sources say his retreat to the secure facility is not just an act of love, it is a strategic standoff. He is daring the institution to survive without the Wales family. He is proving that without Catherine and himself, the monarchy is nothing but a hollow shell run by an aging king and an unpopular queen. He is holding the crown hostage to ensure his wife's safety. It is a high-stakes game of poker played with the British Constitution. If the palace tries to cross him, or if Camilla tries to spin the narrative against Kate again, William holds the ultimate card, the support of the people. But as the days turn into weeks, the pressure will mount. The state requires a visible head. The government requires a counterpart. How long can William stay away before duty forces him to choose between his wife and his country? And if he refuses to return until Kate is fully healed, are we looking at the end of the reign of King Charles III before it has truly even begun? The walls of the palace are shaking, not from scandal, but from emptiness. And in the shadows, the factions are regrouping for the final battle over the soul of the monarchy. As we stand at the precipice of this new era, looking at a monarchy that has been stripped down to its very bones, one truth has become undeniable. The power dynamic has shifted irreversibly. For 1,000 years, the crown relied on mystique, on the idea that the royals were above us, separate from us, and immune to the messy realities of life. But the Kate crisis has shattered that illusion forever. The constitutional nightmare we discussed isn't just a legal problem, it is a moral one. The public has made their verdict clear. They do not want a monarchy run by protocols, gray suits, and shadow figures like the queen consort maneuvering for influence. They want a monarchy that bleeds, that cries, and that tells the truth. Prince William's standoff continues. He remains at the secure facility, guarding the only future the House of Windsor has. He has proven that the institution needs him and Catherine far more than they need the institution. By walking away, he has exposed the terrifying void at the center of the palace. Without the Wales family, the stage is empty. The lights are on, but no one is home. King Charles, in his twilight years, is now tasked with holding the line. He must resist the pressure to return to the old ways. He must ensure that the transparency he promised under Princess Anne's watch is not just a temporary fix, but a permanent law. If he falters, if Camilla claws back her narrative control, or if Kate's condition is hidden again, the backlash will not just be a scandal, it will be the end. Princess Catherine may be silent right now, but her silence is louder than any speech King Charles could ever give. She has forced us to look at the cost of the crown. She has reminded us that behind the gold carriages and the waving flags, there are human beings breaking under the weight of expectation. Her fight against this autoimmune neurological disorder is personal, yes, but her fight against the silencing of that disorder was for all of us. She fought to ensure that truth is no longer a casualty of royal duty. So, what happens next? The coming weeks will define the next century of the British monarchy. Will William return on his own terms? Will Kate recover and take her place not just as a queen, but as a matriarch of truth? Or are we witnessing the slow, painful twilight of the Windsor dynasty? We will be watching every move, we will be analyzing every statement, and we will not let the palace slide back into the shadows. This concludes our special emergency breakdown of the Princess Catherine crisis. The story is far from over, and as new details emerge from the secure facility and Kensington Palace, we will bring them to you immediately. If you believe the palace needs to stop the secrets and start telling the truth, hit the like button right now. And I have a question for you to answer in the comments below. If Prince William decides to walk away from the throne to save his family, would you support him? Yes or no? Make sure you are subscribed and have the bell notification turned on. The palace never sleeps, and neither do we. Thank you for watching.